When the oncologist said my wife had 6 months without treatment, her mother said, "Don't bankrupt yourself trying," and changed her will. Dr. Raymond Keene delivered the diagnosis in his office with Rebecca sitting beside me and her mother Eleanor across the desk. Stage 4, pancreatic cancer. 6 months without aggressive treatment. Maybe 18 months with chemotherapy, immunotherapy, and radiation. Maybe longer with experimental protocols that insurance wouldn't cover. The costs would be catastrophic. Dr. Keene handed us printouts showing treatment options and their price tags. Chemotherapy cycles at $40,000 per round. Clinical trials requiring relocation to research centers. Experimental drugs at $15,000 monthly. Eleanor cleared her throat and spoke before Rebecca or I could process anything. "Dr. Keene, what are the actual survival rates with treatment?" He hesitated. 5-year survival for stage 4 pancreatic cancer is approximately 3%. Treatment extends life, but rarely results in remission. Eleanor turned to me. "David, you need to be realistic. Don't bankrupt yourself trying to buy a few extra months. Rebecca deserves quality time, not suffering through failed treatments while you lose everything." Rebecca's hand went cold in mine. She stared at her mother with an expression I couldn't read. Shock, maybe. Betrayal, definitely. I found my voice. "We're going to fight this. Whatever it takes." Eleanor stood up. "I've seen this before with your father. The treatments destroyed him, bankrupted us. He died anyway. I won't watch my daughter go through that, or watch you destroy your future for false hope." She walked out of Dr. B. Keene's office without looking back. Rebecca started crying, not the loud sobbing kind. Silent tears running down her face while she stared at the treatment printouts. Dr. Keene gave us privacy. I held Rebecca while she cried and told her we'd figure this out. We'd get the best care. We'd try everything. She nodded, but didn't speak. We drove home in silence. Rebecca went straight to bed even though it was only 3 in the afternoon. I sat in our kitchen and started researching. Clinical trials, experimental treatments, survival rates, financial aid programs, everything I could find about pancreatic cancer. The statistics were devastating. Median survival, even with treatment, was less than a year. The letter from Eleanor's attorney arrived 3 days later. Notification that Eleanor Whitmore had revised her estate plan. Rebecca had been removed as primary beneficiary. The family trust, the investment accounts, the vacation properties, the liquid assets totaling approximately $2 million would now go to charity upon Eleanor's death. Rebecca's name appeared nowhere in the new will. The attorney's letter was clinical and brief. No explanation. Just legal notification as required by state law. Rebecca read it twice. Then she called her mother. I heard Rebecca's side of the conversation from the kitchen. "Why would you do this?" Pause. "I'm your daughter." Longer pause. "You think I want your money?" "I'm dying, Mom. I just want my mother." She hung up and told me what Eleanor had said. That Rebecca would waste any inheritance on futile treatments. That David would encourage reckless spending. That the money should go to organizations that could use it responsibly. That she'd watched Rebecca's father die despite throwing everything at his cancer, and she wouldn't enable the same mistake. Rebecca cried for an hour. Then she got angry. The kind of cold fury that settled into her features and didn't leave. We started treatment the following week. Dr. Keene recommended an aggressive protocol, chemotherapy every 2 weeks, radiation therapy 5 days weekly, immunotherapy drugs monthly. The costs added up quickly. Insurance covered some but not all. Our copays and deductibles maxed out within the first month. I liquidated our savings. $12,000 gone immediately. Took a second mortgage on our house. Approved for $80,000, but that wouldn't last long. Started picking up weekend shifts at my engineering firm. Extra projects. Anything that paid. Rebecca's sister Mara called after hearing about the will change. She was horrified. "Mom did what? That's insane. Rebecca needs help right now, not punishment." Mara offered to talk to Eleanor. Try to make her understand. She called me back 2 days later. "Mom won't budge. She said she's protecting Rebecca from prolonging suffering. Said she's protecting you from financial ruin. She actually believes she's doing the right thing." Mara started crying on the phone. "I don't understand our mother anymore." Rebecca's first round of chemotherapy hit her hard. Nausea, fatigue, pain. She lost weight rapidly, couldn't keep food down. Dr. Keene prescribed anti-nausea medication that cost $600 monthly, and insurance denied coverage. I paid cash. Rebecca's hair started falling out in clumps after the second round. She shaved it all off in our bathroom, crying while I held the clippers. She looked at herself in the mirror afterward. "I'm disappearing." Her voice was so small. I told her she was beautiful. She didn't believe me. The medical bills kept coming, stacks of envelopes with payment due notices. I organized them in folders by provider: hospital bills, doctor bills, lab bills, pharmacy bills, each one showing balances in thousands. I paid what I could, made payment plans for the rest, worked extra hours, stopped sleeping much. Rebecca needed me during the day. Work needed me during the night. I existed on coffee and fear. My boss at the engineering firm noticed my exhaustion, asked if everything was okay. I told him about Rebecca's cancer. He was sympathetic, but said I needed to maintain performance standards. The radiation therapy started in September. Rebecca had to go 5 days a week. Each session was short, but the cumulative effect was brutal. Burns on her skin, extreme fatigue. She could barely get out of bed most mornings. I took her to every appointment, held her hand in the waiting room, drove her home and helped her to bed. Then I'd go to work and try to function normally. My coworkers knew something was wrong, but I didn't have energy to explain. The radiation oncologist, Dr. Susan Cross, pulled me aside after the third week. "Rebecca's tolerating treatment as well as can be expected, but I'm concerned about her mental state. Has she spoken to anyone about depression?" I admitted we couldn't afford therapy. Our insurance required referrals and copays we didn't have. Dr. Cross gave me contact information for a cancer support group, free, peer-led. Rebecca refused to go. "I don't want to sit in a circle with dying people," she said. I understood, but worried about her isolation. Eleanor called me directly in October, 3 months after the diagnosis. "David, I need you to listen to me. You're destroying your life. Rebecca's treatment isn't working. The tumor markers are still rising." Dr. Keene told me herself. I asked how she knew Rebecca's medical information. Eleanor said Rebecca had given her access initially, before the diagnosis became terminal. The authorization hadn't been revoked. "The cancer is progressing despite treatment. You're spending money you don't have for nothing. Stop this before you lose everything." I told her Rebecca wanted to fight. Eleanor's voice went cold. "Rebecca is not thinking clearly. The cancer is affecting her judgment. You need to be the rational one. Stop the treatments. Focus on hospice. Let her die with dignity instead of prolonging agony." I hung up on her. Rebecca asked who called. I lied and said work. She was too weak to question it. But that evening she showed me her latest lab results. Eleanor was right. The tumor markers had increased despite 2 months of aggressive treatment. The cancer was winning. Dr. Keene called an emergency consultation, suggested switching protocols, different chemotherapy drugs, higher doses, more aggressive approach. The costs would increase substantially. Insurance would fight coverage. We'd need to appeal every denial. Pay up front and seek reimbursement later. I looked at Rebecca. She was 31 years old. We'd been married 5 years. We were supposed to have decades together. "Do it," Rebecca said. "Whatever it takes." Dr. Keene warned us about side effects: severe nausea, bone marrow suppression, potential organ damage. Rebecca signed the consent forms. "I'm not giving up. I don't care what my mother says. I'm not ready to die." The new protocol started immediately. Cost per cycle increased to $60,000. Insurance denied the first claim. I appealed. While waiting for response, I paid cash using the second mortgage money. Watched our emergency fund evaporate in a single transaction. The second mortgage money ran out in November. 4 months of treatment had cost over $90,000 with more bills still arriving. I applied for medical loans, got approved for $30,000 at 18% interest, signed the papers without hesitation. Rebecca's oncology team recommended a new immunotherapy drug showing promise in trials. Cost was $22,000 per month. Insurance denied it as experimental. I appealed, denied again. I paid for the first month out of the loan money. Rebecca's tumor markers dropped slightly after the first dose. Dr. Keene was cautiously optimistic. "This is a good sign. Let's continue and see if the trend holds." I paid for the second month by maxing out credit cards, 6 cards at their limits. I'd figure out the payments later. Rebecca was responding to treatment. That was all that mattered. Her energy improved slightly. She could eat small meals without immediate nausea. She smiled more. We watched movies together in the evenings again. She laughed at a comedy for the first time in months. The sound made me cry. Mara visited in November. Stayed for a long weekend to help. She cooked meals Rebecca could tolerate. Did laundry. Cleaned the house. Sat with Rebecca during the day so I could sleep a few hours. Before leaving, Mara pulled me aside. "You look terrible, David. When did you last sleep a full night?" I couldn't remember. She gave me $5,000 in cash. "It's everything I have saved. Use it for Rebecca's treatment." I tried to refuse, but she insisted. "My sister is dying. Let me help." I took the money and added it to the treatment fund. It lasted 2 weeks. The collection calls started in December. Medical billing departments wanting payment on overdue accounts. I explained we were paying what we could. They said partial payments weren't acceptable. They wanted full balance or payment plans we couldn't afford. One billing rep told me I should have considered the costs before pursuing treatment. I hung up, started screening calls, only answered numbers I recognized. Rebecca's condition stabilized through December. The immunotherapy was working. Tumor markers continued their slow decline. She gained back 5 pounds, started walking around the house more, even ventured outside on good days. We decorated for Christmas, small tree, minimal decorations. But Rebecca insisted. "I want normal," she said, "even if it's just pretending." Mara came for Christmas. Eleanor didn't. Rebecca called her mother on Christmas morning. I heard Rebecca say she forgave her for the will, that she understood fear made people do cruel things. That she loved her anyway. Eleanor must have said something harsh because Rebecca started crying and hung up. She didn't try calling again. We spent Christmas watching old movies and eating soup. Rebecca's digestive system couldn't handle much else. It was the saddest and most precious Christmas of my life. Every moment felt stolen from death. January brought new financial catastrophe. The engineering firm downsized. My position was eliminated. They gave me 2 weeks severance and a benefits continuation form. I'd lose employer health insurance in 30 days unless I paid for COBRA coverage. The monthly premium was $2,000, more than our mortgage. But without insurance, Rebecca's treatment would cost 10 times more. I signed up for COBRA, took the money from our already depleted reserves. Started applying for new jobs immediately. Every application asked about current employment gaps. I explained honestly. Most companies never responded. The ones that did said they'd chosen other candidates. Rebecca cried when I told her about losing my job. "This is my fault. You're losing everything because of me." I held her and said she was worth everything, that we'd figure it out. But privately, I was terrified. The medical debt had climbed above 200,000. Credit cards maxed, loans in default, no income, savings gone. And Rebecca needed treatment to continue or she'd die. I found contract work in February. Engineering projects for a consulting firm, paid by the hour, no benefits. But it was income. I worked 16-hour days, every project I could take. Rebecca's treatment continued. Dr. Keene reduced the immunotherapy dose because blood tests showed bone marrow suppression. The lower dose meant lower costs. $22,000 dropped to $16,000 monthly. Still astronomical, but more manageable. Insurance covered 30% after I fought through 3 levels of appeals. I paid the rest from the contract work income. Barely. We ate rice and beans most nights, stopped heating the house above 60 degrees, canceled every subscription and service, cut expenses to absolute minimum, funneled every dollar to treatment. Rebecca's tumor markers continued improving, slowly, incrementally, but moving in the right direction. Mara called in February with news. She'd been trying to reach Eleanor for weeks without success. "Mom's not answering calls or texts. Her neighbor said she hasn't seen her in days. Can you check on her?" I didn't want to. Eleanor had abandoned her dying daughter and tried to convince me to give up on treatment. But Mara sounded worried, and Rebecca asked me to go. I drove to Eleanor's house across town, found her collapsed in her kitchen, conscious but weak. She'd fallen 2 days earlier and couldn't get up. Broken hip, dehydrated, disoriented. I called an ambulance, rode with her to the hospital. The ER doctor said another day, and she might not have survived. Eleanor looked at me from the gurney. "Why did you help me?" I took your wife's inheritance. I told her because Rebecca asked me to. Because family helps family even when they don't deserve it. Because spite and bitterness weren't in my nature. Eleanor started crying, didn't stop until they gave her sedatives. Eleanor was hospitalized for 8 days. Hip surgery, physical therapy, complications from the fall, including a kidney infection. I visited twice because Mara was out of state and someone needed to coordinate with doctors. Eleanor's attorney showed up on day 3, a woman named Patricia Lennox. She pulled me aside in the hallway. Mrs. Whitmore wants to discuss her estate plan with you. She asked me to bring the documents. I said I didn't care about her money. Patricia said I should hear Eleanor out anyway. We met in Eleanor's hospital room. She looked small and frail in the bed, nothing like the cold woman who'd walked out of Dr. Keene's office. She told Patricia to explain. Patricia pulled out documents. The revised will that removed Rebecca wasn't the only change Eleanor had made. She'd also taken out a life insurance policy on herself. $2 million payout. Beneficiary was Rebecca. I changed the will to protect the liquid assets, Eleanor explained. If I died while Rebecca was alive, the inheritance would go to medical bills. Bill collectors would drain everything before Rebecca saw a penny. By removing her from the will and creating a life insurance policy instead, the money is protected. I didn't understand, Patricia explained further. Life insurance proceeds generally can't be seized by creditors. They pass directly to beneficiaries outside probate. If Eleanor died while Rebecca was alive and fighting cancer, Rebecca would receive $2 million that couldn't be touched by hospital billing departments or collection agencies, protected money for treatment or quality of life. But if Rebecca died first, the insurance would be worthless, and the estate assets would go to charity, as stated in the will. Eleanor has stage 3 ovarian cancer, Patricia continued, diagnosed 2 months before Rebecca. She's been receiving palliative care only. She has perhaps 6 months remaining. She changed her will and bought the insurance policy to ensure Rebecca would have protected funds if Eleanor died first. The timing is uncertain. She might outlive Rebecca, or Rebecca might outlive her. Either way, she's trying to help in the only way she knows how. Patricia showed me Eleanor's medical records, diagnosis dated 2 months before Rebecca's. Advanced ovarian cancer, spread to multiple organs. Prognosis was terminal, 6 to 9 months maximum. I felt like I'd been hit. Everything recontextualized instantly. Eleanor wasn't abandoning her daughter. She was dying herself and trying to create a safety net that creditors couldn't touch. Her harsh words in Dr. Keene's office weren't cruelty. They were fear. Her own cancer diagnosis had been 2 months before Rebecca's. She'd been processing terminal illness when her daughter received the same death sentence. She'd told me not to bankrupt myself because she'd done exactly that with her husband. Watched him die despite spending everything. Lost their house, destroyed their credit. All for 6 extra months of suffering. The will change that seemed like betrayal was actually strategic protection. Why didn't you tell us? I asked. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. Because Rebecca would have stopped her treatment to focus on me. Would have spent her remaining energy caring for her dying mother instead of fighting for herself. I couldn't let that happen. Better she think I'm cruel than lose hope. Better she hate me and live than love me and die trying to save us both. Eleanor explained further. She'd consulted with estate attorneys and financial planners after her diagnosis. Learned that life insurance was creditor protected in ways inheritance wasn't. Discovered that if Rebecca survived her but had massive medical debt, any inheritance would be immediately seized for payment. The only way to ensure Rebecca had money that couldn't be touched was life insurance. The only way to make Rebecca fight for survival, instead of giving up to care for her dying mother, was to pretend she didn't care, to be cold, to be cruel, to say the words Rebecca would hate. I watched your father drain everything trying to save my husband, Eleanor said. I won't watch you do the same unless there's a chance it works. The statistics say Rebecca has a 3% chance of 5-year survival. Those are terrible odds, but they're not 0. So I'm gambling everything on that 3%. I'm dying either way. At least my death can give her a chance. I drove home in shock, told Rebecca everything. She cried harder than I'd ever seen, not from betrayal, but from understanding. Her mother was dying too, had been dying the entire time. fighting her own cancer while watching her daughter fight the same disease. The next day, Rebecca called Eleanor. They talked for 2 hours. I don't know what they said. That was between them. But Rebecca seemed lighter afterward, less angry, more focused on treatment. Eleanor was discharged from the hospital a week later, moved into a rehabilitation facility. Her ovarian cancer was progressing. She'd been declining further treatment beyond palliative care. Not yet, she told her doctors. I need more time. I understood what she meant. She needed to outlive long enough to ensure the life insurance protected Rebecca. Her death had to come before Rebecca's, or the money would be worthless. She was literally trying to die at the right time, racing her daughter to death, but hoping to lose. The immunotherapy kept working. Rebecca's tumor markers continued dropping slowly. By March, she'd completed 8 rounds. The tumors in her pancreas had shrunk by 30%. Dr. Keene called it remarkable. Exceptional response. She recommended continuing the protocol indefinitely. The financial pressure was crushing. Medical debt had climbed above $200,000. Credit cards maxed. Loans in default. Collection agencies calling daily. I stopped answering the phone, just kept working, kept paying what I could, kept focusing on Rebecca staying alive. My contract work was steady but irregular. Some weeks I made $5,000. Some weeks nothing. I lived in constant fear of losing this income stream like I'd lost my full-time job. Rebecca started applying for disability benefits. The process was complicated, required extensive documentation. Proof she couldn't work, medical records, doctor statements. The application took 6 hours to complete. We submitted it in March. Approval could take months. Eleanor's condition worsened rapidly in late March. The ovarian cancer spread to her liver. Hospice said weeks, not months. Mara came home to help coordinate end-of-life care. Rebecca visited Eleanor daily when she had strength. They'd watch movies together in Eleanor's hospice room, hold hands, talk quietly, reconciling in whatever time remained. Rebecca brought photo albums. They looked through pictures of Rebecca's childhood. Eleanor apologized repeatedly. I'm sorry I couldn't be there. I'm sorry I had to pretend not to care. I'm sorry for everything. Rebecca would say she understood now, that she forgave everything, that she loved her mother. Eleanor would cry and say she didn't deserve forgiveness, but was grateful anyway. I watched them rebuild their relationship in stolen moments between treatments and decline. It was beautiful and heartbreaking. Eleanor's pain increased in early April. Hospice increased her morphine. She slept most of the time. On her lucid days, she'd ask Patricia Lennox about the life insurance. Is everything in order? Will Rebecca get the money? Patricia assured her everything was properly documented. The policy was active. Premiums paid through automatic withdrawal. Rebecca was sole beneficiary. No complications or contingencies. When Eleanor died, Rebecca would receive $2 million that creditors couldn't touch. Eleanor seemed satisfied. Good. Then I did something right. She died on April 8th, 8 months after Rebecca's diagnosis, 7 months after her own terminal prognosis, long enough to ensure the life insurance paid out. Her funeral was small. Rebecca was too weak from treatment to stand for long. We buried Eleanor next to Rebecca's father, the same man whose medical bankruptcy had taught Eleanor to protect assets from creditors. The inscription on Eleanor's headstone read, "Beloved mother and friend." Rebecca had chosen the words, said her mother deserved to be remembered for love, even if the love looked like cruelty. Patricia Lennox handled Eleanor's estate. The will was executed as written. Charitable bequests to cancer research organizations. Nothing to Rebecca. But the life insurance policy paid out within 3 weeks. $2 million deposited directly into Rebecca's account. Protected from the medical debt. Untouchable by collectors. Exactly as Eleanor had planned. Rebecca cried when the money arrived. She died so I could keep fighting. I held her, told her Eleanor wanted this, wanted her to survive, that every cruel word and cold action had been strategy, that her mother had loved her enough to be hated. The money changed everything immediately. We paid off the highest interest medical loans, $30,000 gone to the 18% loan, caught up on mortgage payments. We'd been 3 months behind and facing foreclosure. Paid off all the credit cards. 6 cards totaling $42,000 in balances. Made payment arrangements with the largest medical creditors. Offered lump sum settlements for less than full balance. Many accepted. Continued Rebecca's treatment without worrying about each bill. Dr. Keene recommended an experimental surgical protocol in May. New technique for removing pancreatic tumors after shrinkage from immunotherapy. High risk, but Rebecca qualified because her tumors had responded so well. Only a handful of surgeons in the country performed the procedure. Dr. Thomas Vance at Johns Hopkins was one of them. Cost was $75,000 for the surgery plus hospital stay and recovery expenses. Total estimate around $110,000. Insurance denied coverage as experimental. We paid cash from Eleanor's life insurance. Flew to Baltimore, met with Dr. Vance. He reviewed Rebecca's scans and test results. You're an ideal candidate. The immunotherapy shrunk the tumors significantly. We have a real window to remove them surgically, but you need to understand the risks. Pancreatic surgery is extremely complex. Complications can be fatal. You might not survive the operation. Rebecca looked at him directly. If I don't do the surgery, I die anyway. At least this gives me a chance. Dr. Vance scheduled surgery for May 20th. The surgery happened early morning. Rebecca was prepped at 6 a.m., wheeled into the OR at 7:30. I waited in the surgical waiting room with Mara, 14 hours. Dr. Vance came out at 9:45 p.m., still in scrubs, exhausted. We removed 90% of the tumor mass. The remaining 10% is wrapped around blood vessels we couldn't safely access. We'll monitor it with scans and continue immunotherapy. The surgery went as well as I could have hoped. She's in recovery now. Critical but stable. I started crying from relief. Mara hugged me. We'd made it through the surgery. Rebecca was alive. Dr. Vance explained the recovery process. ICU for several days. Hospital stay for 2 weeks minimum. Complications were possible. Infection, bleeding, organ failure. The next 72 hours are critical. If she makes it through without complications, her prognosis improves significantly. Rebecca spent 4 days in ICU. I stayed with her constantly, slept in a chair beside her bed, watched monitors, listened to alarms, spoke to her even when she was unconscious, told her about Eleanor's sacrifice, about how her mother had loved her enough to die at the right time, about how we were going to survive this. On day 5, she was moved to a regular room, started eating small amounts. Physical therapy began, walking short distances, building strength. The hospital social worker came by to discuss discharge planning, home health services, follow-up appointments, medication management. Rebecca would need substantial support during recovery. We used Eleanor's money for the best post-surgical care: private room, extra nursing support, physical therapy, nutrition counseling. Everything insurance denied, but that improved outcomes. By June, Rebecca was home. Weak, but healing. Continued immunotherapy every month. Tumor markers stayed low. No signs of recurrence in the remaining tumor tissue. The medical debt collection agencies kept calling despite having no access to the insurance money. They threatened liens, court judgments, wage garnishment. They called my contract employer trying to garnish wages, called Rebecca's family members demanding payment, sent threatening letters daily. Patricia Lennox referred me to a medical bankruptcy attorney. His name was Robert Finch. He reviewed everything and said we qualified for Chapter 7. You've got $200,000 in medical debt and minimal assets. The life insurance proceeds are protected by law. You'll discharge the debt and start fresh. Given your situation, bankruptcy is the logical choice. I felt ashamed. Bankruptcy felt like failure, like I hadn't tried hard enough. Robert said most medical bankruptcies involved people who'd done everything right, but the system broke them anyway. The medical billing system is designed to bankrupt patients. You're not failing. The system failed you. I filed bankruptcy in July. Felt like failure, but also relief. The medical system had broken us financially, but Eleanor's planning meant we could survive it. The bankruptcy process took 4 months. Credit counseling, documentation of all debts, meeting of creditors. Every medical bill related to Rebecca's cancer treatment was listed. Hospital bills, doctor bills, lab bills, pharmacy bills, surgery costs, everything. The trustee reviewed our case, determined we had no significant assets beyond basic necessities and protected insurance proceeds. Discharge was granted in November. Every medical bill eliminated. Fresh start. The house was safe. Rebecca's treatment could continue. We'd paid cash for everything since Eleanor's life insurance arrived, so no new debt accumulated. Eleanor's money lasted through Rebecca's ongoing care. We budgeted carefully, used it for treatments insurance denied, for medications with no generic options, for comfort care and quality of life. Every dollar stretched as far as possible, paid for private physical therapy 3 times weekly, helped Rebecca regain strength faster, paid for nutritionists who specialized in cancer recovery, developed meal plans Rebecca could tolerate, paid for home health aid twice weekly, gave me breaks to work and sleep. Rebecca's disability benefits were finally approved in December, 10 months after application. Retroactive to her diagnosis date. She received a lump sum payment of $18,000 for back benefits, then monthly payments of $1,500 going forward. It wasn't much, but it helped. Covered some ongoing expenses. Let us preserve more of Eleanor's money for treatment. Rebecca's energy slowly improved through fall and winter. She could walk around the block by October, could cook simple meals by November, started laughing more, started talking about the future in concrete terms instead of hypotheticals. Her 1-year survival came in August the following year. Statistically impossible odds. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer with 3% 5-year survival rate, but she was alive. Responding to treatment, living. Dr. Keene called her a miracle case, used her in presentations at medical conferences. Evidence that new immunotherapy protocols could work even in terminal diagnoses. Rebecca started a blog in September, called it 3% Chance, wrote about her experience fighting stage 4 pancreatic cancer, about her mother's sacrifice, about the will change that looked like abandonment but was actually love, about fighting cancer while navigating medical bankruptcy, about learning her mother was dying too but chose to hide it so her daughter would focus on survival. Her first post went viral, shared thousands of times. Comments poured in. People shared their own stories of medical debt, of family betrayal that turned out to be protection, of impossible choices and systemic failures. Rebecca wrote weekly posts, detailed her treatment journey, explained medical billing problems, discussed insurance denials and appeals. Her readership grew. 10,000 followers by October, 20,000 by November. Media outlets contacted her for interviews. Local news, national health blogs, cancer advocacy organizations. Rebecca became a voice for patients crushed by medical debt. Rebecca started speaking at events in early winter. Patient advocacy organizations invited her to share her story. She'd talk about Eleanor's sacrifice, about the life insurance strategy that protected money from creditors, about how the medical system forced families into bankruptcy despite insurance, about how 3% survival odds were still worth fighting for. Audiences responded emotionally. Many cried. Many approached her afterward, sharing similar experiences. One woman said her father had done the same thing. Changed his will to look like he was cutting her off when actually he was protecting assets for her disabled brother's care. He died without telling her the truth. She'd spent years hating him. Rebecca's story helped her understand. Another man said he was currently fighting cancer and his mother had just changed her will. He'd been devastated until hearing Rebecca's story. Now he wondered if his mother was protecting him too. Rebecca told him to ask directly. Don't wait for a letter after death. He called his mother that night. She admitted she had terminal heart disease and was trying to protect him from her medical debt. 2-year survival came in August. Rebecca's scans showed no evidence of disease in the removed tumor areas. The remaining 10% of tumor tissue that couldn't be surgically accessed remained stable, not growing, not spreading. Dr. Keene called it extraordinary, published a case study in an oncology journal. Rebecca's immunotherapy protocol became recommended treatment for similar presentations. Other patients started surviving because her case proved the approach worked. Dr. Keene said Rebecca had effectively become a research subject. Her case was teaching oncologists new approaches, giving other patients hope. We'd spent most of Eleanor's life insurance policy on treatment and recovery. Approximately $1.4 million gone. Treatment costs, surgery, recovery care, home health support, medication not covered by insurance. But Rebecca was alive and showing no evidence of disease. The remaining $600,000 sat in protected accounts. Our emergency fund, our security blanket. The house was safe. My bankruptcy had been discharged. Credit slowly rebuilding. We were living again, instead of just surviving. Rebecca's advocacy work grew substantially in year 3. She testified before state legislature about medical bankruptcy and insurance reform, spoke about Eleanor's sacrifice, about how families shouldn't need to strategize asset protection while dying, about how insurance should cover effective treatments regardless of experimental status, about how survival shouldn't require bankruptcy. Several legislators were moved, proposed bills to protect families from medical debt, to require insurance coverage for promising cancer treatments, to limit how aggressively creditors could pursue medical debt collection. None of the bills passed. Insurance lobbyists killed them in committee. But Rebecca kept speaking, kept writing, kept sharing her story. She consulted with patient advocacy organizations, helped develop resources for families navigating cancer treatment and medical debt, created guides about life insurance strategies, about bankruptcy options, about appealing insurance denials. Her blog expanded into a full website with resources, forums, and support groups. 3-year survival came with celebration. Clean scans, no recurrence, no growth in the remaining tumor tissue. Dr. Keene said Rebecca had beaten statistical impossibility. Rebecca organized a memorial service for Eleanor at the Cancer Treatment Center where she'd received care, raised money for a patient assistance fund in Eleanor's name, the Eleanor Whitmore Patient Assistance Fund, designed to help families cover costs insurance denied. Seeds money came from small portion of remaining life insurance proceeds. $20,000. Rebecca's speaking fees and blog advertising revenue added more. Donations from readers and supporters grew the fund. Within 6 months, the fund had helped 12 families pay for treatment. Cancer patients who couldn't afford experimental drugs, families facing bankruptcy from medical bills, people fighting the same impossible odds Rebecca had faced. Each family received grant money with no strings, no repayment required, just help when they needed it most. Rebecca personally reviewed each application, cried over most of them, funded as many as the budget allowed. Rebecca's health stayed stable through years 4 and 5. Regular monitoring, scans every 3 months, blood tests monthly, preventive care, careful attention to any symptoms, but she was living, working part-time, managing her advocacy organization, thriving in ways we couldn't have imagined during those dark early months. The remaining tumor tissue never grew, never spread, just stayed stable, dormant. Dr. Keene said Rebecca's immune system was keeping it in check. The immunotherapy had trained her body to recognize and suppress cancer cells. As long as it stayed stable, they'd leave it alone. Aggressive intervention could do more harm than good. The medical debt that had nearly destroyed us was gone. The bankruptcy had been the right choice. We'd traded credit rating for survival, and won. Eleanor's life insurance had been perfectly timed, had protected the money we needed, had given Rebecca the chance to survive. Eleanor had died believing Rebecca might live, had bet everything on 3% odds, had won the only gamble that mattered. 5 years after diagnosis, Dr. Keene declared Rebecca cured. Statistical miracle. 1 of 3% who survived stage 4 pancreatic cancer. She'd done it through aggressive treatment, experimental protocols, surgical intervention, and her mother's sacrifice. Eleanor had died to protect money that saved her daughter's life, had let Rebecca believe she was abandoned rather than reveal her own terminal illness, had planned every detail to maximize Rebecca's chances. The cruelty had been love in disguise. The will change had been strategy. The harsh words in Dr. Keene's office had been fear manifesting as pragmatism. Rebecca understood it all now, forgave everything, honored her mother's memory by helping other families fight impossible odds. The Eleanor Whitmore Patient Assistance Fund had grown substantially. Helped over 200 families by year 5. Raised nearly $500,000. Became a model for other patient assistance programs. Rebecca was invited to speak nationally. Cancer conferences, medical ethics symposiums, healthcare policy forums. Her story resonated because it exposed systemic problems while showing how one woman's strategic sacrifice made survival possible. We rebuilt our lives slowly. I found stable employment again. Senior engineer at a medical device company, good salary, excellent benefits. Health insurance that actually covered things. We paid off remaining debts, rebuilt savings, bought a smaller house. The old one had too many painful memories. Started fresh in a new neighborhood. Rebecca continued her advocacy work, published a book about her experience. 3%, surviving cancer, medical bankruptcy, and my mother's secret sacrifice. It became a bestseller, used in medical schools to teach about patient financial burden, used in social work programs to understand medical debt, used in support groups to give hope to families facing similar situations. Rebecca donated all proceeds to the Patient Assistance Fund. Every dollar went to helping others survive. She received awards, patient advocacy recognition, healthcare reform champion, cancer survivor inspiration. She accepted them graciously, but always said the real hero was Eleanor, the mother who loved her daughter enough to appear cruel so her daughter would live. We visited Eleanor's grave monthly, brought flowers, told her about Rebecca's health, about the families the fund had helped, about how her sacrifice had rippled outward, saving lives she'd never meet. Rebecca would sit by the headstone and talk to her mother, thank her for the impossible choice, for the strategic cruelty, for dying at exactly the right time to ensure the life insurance protected everything, for betting on 3% odds when everyone else said give up, for loving fiercely enough to be hated. Eleanor's gravestone became a pilgrimage site for some of Rebecca's blog readers. They'd leave flowers, leave notes, thank a woman they'd never met for showing them that sometimes love looks like abandonment, that sometimes the cruelest act is the most loving, that sometimes dying at the right time is the greatest gift a parent can give. 7 years after diagnosis, Rebecca remained cancer-free. The remaining tumor tissue was gone, completely absorbed by her immune system. Dr. Keene called it unprecedented. Rebecca's case was studied internationally, her treatment protocol adopted as standard care for similar presentations. Survival rates for stage 4 pancreatic cancer began improving, from 3% 5-year survival to 7%. Small increase, but significant. Hundreds of lives saved annually because Rebecca's case proved aggressive immunotherapy plus surgery could work. Eleanor's sacrifice had purchased more than just her daughter's life, had purchased a proof of concept, had shown medical science a new path, had saved people Eleanor would never meet through research her death enabled. The Eleanor Whitmore Patient Assistance Fund distributed over $1 million by year 7, helped 500 families, prevented dozens of medical bankruptcies, gave people fighting cancer the resources to actually fight instead of choosing between treatment and financial survival. Rebecca's advocacy had changed state laws in 6 states: medical debt protection, insurance coverage requirements, creditor limitations, small victories but meaningful. Each law potentially saved families from the hell we'd endured. Rebecca called me one evening in year 8. I was at work. She was crying. I'm pregnant. We'd been told chemotherapy and radiation had likely made pregnancy impossible. Ovarian damage, fertility destroyed. We'd accepted we wouldn't have children. But somehow, impossibly, Rebecca was pregnant. Dr. Keene was cautiously optimistic. Your body healed more than we thought possible. This is extraordinary. The pregnancy was high risk, required careful monitoring. But Rebecca and the baby stayed healthy. Our daughter was born healthy, perfect. We named her Eleanor Grace, Eleanor for Rebecca's mother, Grace for the mercy we'd been given. Holding my daughter in the hospital while Rebecca slept, I thought about Eleanor, about her sacrifice, about how she'd died believing she might save her daughter, but never imagining she'd save her grandchild too. Eleanor Grace would never meet her namesake, but she existed because a grandmother had loved strategically enough to appear cruel, had died at exactly the right time, had bet everything on impossible odds, and won beyond measure. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.